Old problems, new platform. Don't eat, you don't deserve it. Not losing weight fast enough. I have to be perfect. I want to see bones. Starve. My name is Kelly Martnick, and I'm a senior in the Flex program. I spent the last year in Flex basically researching pro-anorexia and bulimia blogs and websites for my senior research paper and my big board presentation now. So today I want to talk to you. My main goal is to educate you about what these are. I want to talk about what is pro-ana or pro-anorexia. I want to talk about the impacts and the history of these websites and blogs, the complications with removing them from the internet, and then finally possible solutions to this problem. So I want to acknowledge up front that some of the images in my presentation and in the videos that I'm going to show are a little bit graphic, but honestly I think it's doing a disservice to you as the audience and to my presentation to not show some of them, the ones that are absolutely necessary. And I did try to pick the least graphic and the most informational videos I could. So, oh God, what did it do? Just keep it on, don't worry about it. Pro-eating disorder sites, which are self-dubbed pro-ana for pro-anorexia and pro-mia for pro-bulimia, encourage destructive behaviors by presenting eating disorders as glamorous or trendy. So I'm curious, I want to ask who in the audience has heard of this trend and who hasn't. Raise your hand if you haven't. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, that brings me a little bit to talk about how I picked my topic in the first place. I did a 5-week residential program in journalism at Northwestern University last summer, and we had to do a trend story, and we got to pick our own topic for this 1,600-word trend story. And the specific directions were to pick something new enough that everyone doesn't already know about it, but something that enough people know about so you know it's actually a trend. And I picked Fitspiration, and which is these websites that inspire people to work out and be more fit. But I found in my research on these websites that they can also almost cross the line into promoting eating disorders. I actually, when I was doing this story at Northwestern, the day before we were going to pitch our trend stories to professional media outlets, the Huffington Post came out with a story on Fitspo with all of, like, half of the same sources and all of the same information I had in my story that I already had written. But it did prove to me that this was a really good topic, and I found in my research for that there are these websites that are actively promoting eating disorders and admitting it. And I thought that that was an even more interesting thing to do my research project on, and not to mention more of a problem. So I want to show you guys a video, first of all, to start off. I want to show, it's a little bit graphic, like I said, but it's really informational, and it really shows what these pro-anorexia sites are all about. So, here we go.
Skeletal selfies led 14-year-old to develop anorexia. India Edmonds, now 17, said that at the age of 14 she developed anorexia. She said she always felt uncomfortable about her weight because she used to be bullied by her classmates for having short, chubby legs. She began spending a lot of time combing through the internet and photo sites such as Instagram and Pinterest to find Thinspiration photos. Edmonds became obsessed with her thigh gap and often took a dozen selfies a day. Thinspiration photos are often selfies taken by pro-anorexia, or pro-ana for short, individuals who share tips on how to lose weight, purge, and starve themselves into being ever thinner. Edmonds was a healthy 136 pounds, but when she was finally hospitalized for her eating disorder 6 months later, she barely weighed 84 pounds. During the first 3 months of her 7-month hospital stay, Edmonds was force-fed through an eating tube, while doctors and family tried to convince the teenager that she had to eat or she'd die. Edmonds said that the pro-ana blogs and photo sites helped her destroy her self-respect and her life. One of the common set of rules found on many sites are the 10 thin commandments. Thin commandments. 1. If you aren't thin, you aren't attractive. 2. Being thin is more important than being healthy. 3. You must buy clothes, style your hair, take laxatives, starve yourself, do anything to make yourself look thinner. 4. Thou shalt not eat without feeling guilty. 5. Thou shalt not eat fattening food without punishing oneself afterwards. 6. Thou shalt count calories and restrict intake accordingly. 7. What the scale says is the most important thing. 8. Losing weight is good. Gaining weight is bad. 9. You can never be too thin. 10. Being thin and not eating are signs of true willpower and success. Edmonds is now well onto the road to recovery and weighs a healthier 110 pounds. Instagram announced a ban on users who promoted anorexia or other eating disorders. Some countries, such as Italy, have even considered criminalizing pro-Ana sites and writers. And finally, anyone's for a wafer mint?
The smartest, most insightful comments can win you $100. Open at tomonews.net.
Okay, so what that video really shows are the main characteristics of these sites. Like they talked about the 10 thin commandments. And according to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, the characteristics of pro-Ana sites are glamorizing images of very thin women, demonizing food and fat, promoting thinness at any cost, and boasting exclusivity. Some other really prevalent themes on these sites are shame, self-control, and perfection. These are the main themes, basically saying that if you weigh too much or you eat too much, you're not good enough. And if you're anything short of perfect, you're not good enough and you should keep trying to get there. Just like the 10th thin commandment that they cited in the video that said, being thin and not eating are signs of true willpower and success. So what's really dangerous about these sites is that they paint this unhealthy calorie restriction as a sign of true willpower and success, when really these things are symptoms of a disease. It's also really important to acknowledge that a blog isn't going to give you anorexia or bulimia. They're mental disorders, but the danger in these blogs is that for people who are already susceptible to things like this, they make it worse and they provide encouragement to stay in the disease rather than to seek treatment. So one of the scarier studies I found was that these can affect anyone. They can't, obviously it's not going to give you anorexia like I said, but in one study by Scarlett Karen Jett, they asked college-aged women with no history of eating disorders to view pro-eating disorder sites for a short period of time. And 48% of the women said that the sites made them feel dissatisfied with their bodies, while 84% decreased their caloric intake by an average of 2,470 calories over the next week. To put that in perspective, the average American woman over the age of 20 eats 11,900 calories every week. So if this big circle is the average calories that an American woman over 20 eats in a week, these study participants cut down on their caloric intake by an average of this pink chunk. That's over a day's worth of calories that they didn't eat in the week following viewing these sites. And these are women with no history of eating disorders. So now I want to talk about how these sites came to be. According to Partners in Illness, which was a 2002 journal article from the American Psychological Association, tip sharing has occurred among anorexics in inpatient clinics as long as these inpatient clinics have existed. And these are the places where anorexics are sent, sufferers of anorexia are sent to recover and to put weight back on. But they're actually sharing tips for staying thin and often competing to maintain the lowest weight in their ward. So obviously this problem existed without any help, but the internet provided the perfect platform to amplify it. In the late 1990s, these sites started to be profiled on Oprah. And according to one study, in the year following the first story on Oprah, the rate of appearance of these sites increased by 470%. In 2001, the mainstream media started to get a hold of this story. And if you go, in my research, I found that most of the main articles on this are from people doing a trend story like I was doing back in 2001 on the first appearances of these pro-Ana blogs. And they found that Yahoo was hosting the most of them of any web provider. So in 5 days in July of 2001, Yahoo shut down 115 of these sites. But the result of this is that pro-Ana sites move underground. And what that means is they're then being hosted by private web portals because they've been shut down by the larger ones at the time, like Yahoo and MSN. And they continue like this for a while, and whether it's correlation or causation, Between 2000 and 2009, the rate of the number of people hospitalized for eating disorders increased by 24%. So in 2006, Twitter was launched, and in 2007, Tumblr was launched. So social media in 2008 is just starting to become very popular. And BBC News reported that there was an estimated 500 pro-eating disorder sites on the internet in 2008. I want you to keep the number 500 in your mind because it's about to seem very, very small. Once these sites get a hold on social media and they get a footing, it provides the perfect storm for this movement. And today, based on a 2013 study by SimilarWeb, there were over 200,000 blogs just on Tumblr that used language related to self-harm and eating disorders, compared to the estimated 500 sites in 2008. And this is just on Tumblr. So I want to talk a little bit about what has been done, because it's not all negative. Like the video said, Instagram banned this kind of content, and Tumblr and Pinterest have taken strong stances against it. But that doesn't mean that it's gone. If you search for pro-anorexia or pro-ana on Tumblr, among other things like cutting and suicide and pro-bulimia, this warning will come up, and it basically says, everything okay? And it says that eating disorders are not a lifestyle choice, and if you or someone you love is suffering from one, you should call one of these numbers or visit one of these websites for counseling, which is really, really helpful. But right under this big button that says go back, there's a little link that says view search results. And as helpful as this trigger warning is if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, my bet is that the majority of people who search pro-ana or pro-anorexia on Tumblr know what they're getting themselves into. So you click through and you can see your search results. My natural next question in my research was, why can't we just take these sites down? And it turns out there are three main reasons we can't just take them down. The first reason is that they're actually more difficult to identify than you would think. The study that estimated that there are 200,000 Tumblr blogs that use this language was done using really obviously related tags like thinspo or pro-ana or pro-bulimia. And the people who ran the study said that if they had included less obviously related tags or purposely misspelled tags that sites use to get around their trigger warnings, like thinspo with a Y or loose weight with 2 O's instead of lose, the number would have been so much bigger than 200,000. But, so yeah, they're much more difficult to identify than you would think. And the second reason is site traffic. Michael Hayward, who is the co-founder of the app Whisper, said that social media sites are not willing to do anything that even remotely alienates a small amount of their audience or that's going to affect their daily numbers. And site traffic is how sites like Tumblr make their money, based on advertising and stuff like that. So this one is about the financial bottom line. If something that they take down is going to affect how many people are on their site each day and how much money they make, they don't really want to take it down. So we have difficulty in identifying and site traffic. But the biggest reason we can't just take these sites down is the First Amendment. Americans are very reluctant to do anything that they think might even remotely infringe on someone's First Amendment right to free speech. In 2006, Australia actually criminalized pro-suicide websites, and there was a whole debate over whether or not this took away their citizens' rights to free speech. But over the summer, when I was doing my story on Fitspiration, I got to talk to two really cool women, Dr. Allison Darcy and Dr. Mary Sanders, who are both professors in the Department of Psychiatry at Stanford School of Medicine, specifically in their eating disorder department. So when I talked to Dr. Darcy, I asked her if she thought that there was a case for censoring harmful Fitspiration posts that actually bordered on promoting eating disorders. And she said no. She said that she didn't think you could make a case for censoring something when there wasn't enough research to prove that it was actually harming anyone. But when I asked her about pro-anorexia sites, she had a very different argument. And I'm just going to put the quote up there because I think the way she said it is really powerful, and I think it just makes the case. She said that the pro-anorexia sites are different because they're very intentionally encouraging behaviors that end in death. And she went on to say that that is a much easier case for censorship. So to tie all of this back to my thesis for my paper, my thesis essentially said that pro-eating disorder sites use the internet as a means of encouraging destructive behaviors. But if we use it correctly, the internet could also be the solution. So one of the possible solutions to this problem is to change the way that the mainstream society talks about eating disorders and body image. So there's a quote from the Social Issues Resources Center that says that it is society's association of fat with laziness and thinness with strength and morality that encourages these sites' illusions of superiority and exclusivity. Basically what they're saying is that because mainstream society values thinness so much, it fuels these sites. So that was proven in one of these articles that I read. I want to say it was in the Atlantic Monthly. It was an interview with a pro-Ana blogger, and she said that actually most of the photos on her site come from model portfolios. So that just shows that actually a lot of what these sites use, while they use it destructively, is coming from the mainstream media. And a couple things that have been done around the world to combat that are in Israel, there's a law that regulates the body mass index of models. So if your BMI is too low and you qualify as malnourished or underweight, you cannot model in Israel. Another is in Australian Fashion Week. They actually are trying to transition into using athletes to model the clothing instead of models to project a healthier body image, more of fitness than of thinness. Another way we can change the way we talk about eating disorders is to refrain from reporting grisly details. Just like you wouldn't report the very, very grisly details of a murder because you could encourage copycats, refraining from reporting the weights and eating habits of very sick sufferers of anorexia will stop other sufferers from using those numbers as encouragement and goals in their disease. The next solution is to teach people to associate health with balance and not with thinness. Dr. Mary Sanders at Stanford had a good quote about that. She said, "True health is all about balance. What I tend to see on a lot of these sites, a lot of these blogs, is promoting extremes, not balance. Anytime anybody pushes themselves to extremes, it'll eventually backfire." And the third and final solution is to use the internet to reach out. Anorexia and bulimia and EDNOS, which is eating disorders not otherwise specified, are diseases that are a lot about secrecy and keeping it from people. And these are people who are reaching out on the internet to someone. And to some degree, that's a cry for help. So these sites, I think, eventually could be used to identify sufferers and provide treatment for them. All right, finally, I would like to talk about my community outreach. I have been speaking with Julie LeBurn, who's the assistant principal at Pierce Elementary School, which is where I went to elementary school. And I wanted to keep the tone of my community outreach a little bit lighter because I wanted to target it at younger girls rather than, the internet or eating disorders specifically. So my plan right now is to go to Pierce Elementary and talk to their Girls on the Run, All Girls After School Club about body image and body positivity. And I'm going to do this activity that I did when I was in elementary school, where we decorate little mirrors, and the circle is your face, and you decorate the hair around it to look like you, to give them a tangible thing to take home, to remember the things that we talk about. And I kind of just want it to be a conversation and lighter, and I just don't want to spend any more time looking at pro-eating disorder blogs. So if you have any questions, I will take them now. Thank you very much. Blah, blah, blah.
I think that was good.
Yeah?